Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu, and this is, of course, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. Now, a moment of truth in Nigeria as it attempts to build social cohesion among its many peoples, cohesion that is absolutely essential if this country is to survive and thrive. A new survey, massive in scope and scale, has just been released by the Africa Polling Institute with support from the Ford Foundation, and it shows growing distrust towards the government by citizens, as well as deepening suspicion and doubt between fellow Nigerians and a greater predisposition towards ethnicity over nationalism. Just 4 years ago, the same survey showed that 45% of Nigerians perceived the country to be divided, but today that perception has increased by a whopping 20 points to 65%, showing that Nigeria has become more deeply divided along ethnic, socio-economic, political and religious lines, divisions which clearly constitute a fundamental threat to the social fabric, unity and peace of this country. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by Professor Bell Ihua, Executive Director of the Africa Polling Institute, the organization that carried out the survey. Dr. Ihua is also a Professor of Practice in Opinion Research at Coal City University, Enugu. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Charles. It's great to be back.
I mean, we've been here before, haven't
right.
we? And it hasn't got better, has it? Break it down for us into bite-sized, sort of digestible chunks. What are the top lines that have emerged from your latest National Social Cohesion Survey?
Well, thanks for having me again. It's great to be here. Well, you know, of course, the concept of social cohesion talks about the willingness of citizens to cooperate and work together on two fronts. One, to coexist as a people, and two, to prosper together as a people. So in some ways we can say, yes, we are coexisting because we're still a nation. But the second question is, are we really prospering as a nation? Do we have peace? Do we have unity? That are all, you know, ingredients of what makes for a prosperous society. I guess your guess is as good as mine. So this latest survey tried to, with the support of Ford Foundation, trend the findings from the 2019 survey and the 2021 survey, and the findings are quite telling. So first of all, we see that there has become a leaning of citizens towards ethnicity than towards nationalism. Compared to what we experienced or what we saw in 2019, about 83% of Nigerians now prefer to see themselves with dual identity, with more leanings on their ethnicity. And of course, this is why we have ethnic champions like the likes of Sunday Igboho, Nnamdi Kanu, and their opinions resonate with the people. And this shows that. Just as you mentioned, key issue was that in 2019, we asked citizens, compared to 4 years ago, how divided or united would you say the country is? At the time, 45% thought the country was much more divided than 4 years, the 4 previous years. But in 2021, 65% of Nigerians say the country is much more divided. But that's not all. There's also the issue of trust. There's a growing distrust towards, public institutions and government. So President Buhari, for example, his approval rating from the people dropped from 42% in 2019 to 26% in 2021.
That's pretty dramatic.
Yes, and not just the president, National Assembly as well, dropped from 33% in 2019 to 22% in 2021. Same with the judiciary, dropped from 32% to 26%. So we see generally a decline in citizens' trust towards state institutions. However, we still see that citizens have higher levels of trust for traditional rulers and religious leaders, at least an average of 50%.
Yes, I was actually going to get to that a bit later on, but this was obviously a very big job indeed across the whole of Nigeria, involving thousands of people.
Yes, indeed. We had about 5,363 Nigerians that participated in this survey across the length and breadth of the country, across every single state and every single senatorial district. We visited 2 local governments per senatorial district. And so this is really massive in scale and scope. And, you know, it just goes to tell you that Nigerians were willing to pour out their hearts, really. Something interesting that we saw, and this was, for me, I wondered what has happened. So in 2019, we asked citizens, if you had the opportunity to relocate with your family out of this country, would you seize that opportunity? In 2019, only 32% said they would seize that opportunity. However, in 2021, that number had jumped up to 73%.
Good God.
I mean,
that's massive.
Massive scale. So you begin to wonder what has happened in 4 years that has made citizens to say, if there's an opportunity to emigrate with my family, I'm going to seize that opportunity.
But do you try and find out why that change has occurred?
Yes. I mean, the truth of the matter is there's growing economic hardship in the country, you know, coupled by the double whammy effect of insecurity. All over the country, certain roads have become death traps or kidnapper zones or banditry zones. There's growing insecurity tailor-made to different regions. Of course, we have the IPOB issues in the southeast. We have kidnapping. So because of this growing insecurity and economic hardship, citizens are saying if there's an opportunity to look elsewhere for greener pastures, we probably will consider those opportunities to look elsewhere.
That's very interesting. So how fundamental is this survey and this type of survey for progress in Nigeria? Because, I mean, you need social progression, not just for survival in Nigeria, but for the country to make progress.
Precisely, Charles. You know, the beauty of what we've done is that if this was just a one-off survey, you could say, oh, this is just a one-off survey. But this is trended survey that shows us analysis from 2019 and that shows us more recent analysis so that policymakers, the government can look into this data and say, oh, what is going on? What is happening? Because it's one thing for government to initiate policies and initiate rules, but it's a different thing entirely for those policies to actually meet the, you know, the needs and the expectations of the people. Just like your last guest said, we have experienced or we've observed a growing angst, especially amongst the young people. They feel excluded, they feel marginalized, they feel that there are no opportunities in Nigeria to thrive. And any opportunity they have to ventilate their anger, they take advantage of such opportunities to ventilate their anger against state institutions or possibly against their fellow citizens. And that's why we're having rising cases of jungle justice and, you know, and all of that in the society.
But I mean, does the government actually look at your figures? And I mean, you've done this survey for a few times, at least a couple of times now. What have they done with it in terms of learning something about the way the society, given that they themselves don't have that statistic?
Two things. One, first of all, I'll say that it's not all grim. The data is not all grim, because at least it shows that 63% of Nigerians say they are willing to work with fellow citizens to make the country more united and a better country, while almost 60% say that they believe the future of the country will be better. But in terms of policy, in terms of policymakers, we recently organized a national social cohesion dialogue, and I'm glad to say that the vice president was there in attendance, and the vice president had a copy of the report, looked through the report, and appreciated the efforts of Africa Polling Institute for taking time out to go into the field, gather data, and bring up a very useful report of this nature. So to that extent, we know that government in some cases is really looking at our data. Also, the president in his independence speech mentioned the fact that national cohesion is one of the important things that we need to be driving and the conversations
so it's getting through.
So we believe that it's getting through, not just because we hear the president or the vice president talking about it, but because we are beginning to see that policies are beginning to get geared, whether at federal, state, or local government level. Strategies towards promoting social cohesion are beginning to gradually take shape.
Right, but beyond the moves by the government, which are yet to be properly measured, as to what they actually use your survey to do, what do your findings tell us about this country, the bigger picture? Does it suggest that 61 years after independence, the strength and intensity of social cohesion is still very weak in Nigeria, and it is still very far from where it should be?
It is far from where it should be. I mean, we calculated the social cohesion index, and the social cohesion index shows that the state of cohesion at the moment in the country is about 44.2%, which is below the 50% threshold. So again, it tells you that a lot of work has to be done.
But has it improved?
No, it hasn't.
Okay,
it hasn't.
right.
It has deteriorated. And that's why we should be looking for levers of cohesion to pull and to ensure that the country is more united. In terms of policies, we should be looking about how to create a sense of belonging for every citizen, how to promote unity. And we see that sort of line of discussion, and we need to create opportunities for dialogue as well.
And I suppose from the point of view of the government, looking for instance at the finding in your survey that suggests growing citizens' distrust towards the state and by extension the government, I'm wondering why what you found was the reason for that. Is there the perception of increasing state control, or is the perception that the state and by extension the government is deepening divisions in Nigerian society? A combination of
it's a
both?
combination, but
something else?
It's a combination. But one of the big factors, sort of the big elephant in the room, is growing disappointment. President Buhari came into power with, great enthusiasm. People are saying, yes, we know him based on his antecedents, military, former general. He's going to come in, stamp his feet on the ground, ensure that corruption is totally wiped out.
Fall into
ensure
line.
that, with his security experience, we are going to have, be able to sleep with our two eyes closed. And over time, that has dissipated. And, it has led to a significant rise in distrust.
Right, and considerable disillusionment.
Precisely.
And of course, government and the state are supposed to provide the glue that helps to hold society together. They're sort of escalators of opportunity where cultural tensions are not sort of exacerbated by ethnicity and religion and all of that, and are not supposed to be handicaps. But I mean, Nigeria, not a great force for social cohesion then? Is that a correct conclusion to draw?
It is somewhat, especially because certain levers of cohesion are not being stimulated. For example, we know that sport is one big tool for social cohesion. When the Super Eagles of Nigeria plays football, no one cares what's your ethnic group.
Absolutely.
We all sit down and
so
we enjoy it.
Things
so we
like
need
that.
more tools, more platform to promote social cohesion. Also, on the side of government, apart from action, there needs to be body language, that tells that government is doing everything to promote unity. In the 70s, for example, we had individuals who were referred to as the super permanent secretaries. Dr. Alison Ayida, Ambassador JTF Iyala, Jerome Odoji, Ahmed Joda, Ibrahim Danchida, and the rest of them. These gentlemen who were, top-level bureaucrats were known as those who bore the unity of this country on their shoulder and did everything to make sure the country promoted unity.
We're going to come back and talk some more. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu. So, Nigerians still grappling with issues of trust, equity and inclusion between them and government and amongst themselves, making it near impossible to have a properly cohesive society. So if Nigeria wants to build an integrated and cohesive society and a successful multi-ethnic country, trust levels have to grow. Those are the findings of the respected Africa Polling Institute. Whatever promises successive Nigerian governments have made to try to build a more socially cohesive society haven't been met. So is all this leading to less cohesion and more tension in communities in Nigeria? And is it inevitable that ethnic and religious divisions make Nigerians worry more about their fellow citizens from different ethnicities in this country and therefore harms social cohesion? Well, that survey was conducted by the Africa Polling Institute. Its executive director, Professor Bell Ihua, who's also a professor of practice in opinion research at Coal City University, Enugu, is still with me in the studio. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. And were these people the same respondents you spoke to in your last survey, or were they different?
No, they were different respondents. So we are not running what you call a panel here. If we were running a panel survey, it would mean that we speak to the same set of people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we need to just clarify
yeah,
it's
not a panel. So it's a fresh set of surveys speaking to Nigerians.
Different people.
Yes, different people.
And this survey has now become something you do like every couple of years. Is that right? So it's become a sort of barometer to measure how close or how far apart the people or peoples of Nigeria are.
Precisely. With the last one we conducted before this was 2019. Unfortunately, we couldn't get funding because this, surveys of this nature are pretty expensive.
Yeah, they're very big, aren't they?
Luckily, in 2020, we managed to get some funding from Ford Foundation, and for a couple of years. So we ran the 2021 survey, and hopefully we'll continue in 2022 with a fresh survey. Continue to track the trend. So
well, I have to say that your survey is a very important one.
Thank you.
And having felt the pulse of Nigerians this time, what are the indicators that you used?
Okay, so there were 10 indicators, and that's the beauty, because when you run a trend survey, you can always progress and move and expand as the survey goes on. So in 2019, we used 5 indicators: identity, trust, social justice, patriotism and participation, and future worth and expectation. But in 2021, we had to introduce other indicators such as corruption, impunity, gender equity, as well as natural resource governance, because obviously when you talk about farmers, herders, clashes, there's natural resource governance, you talk about source of water, you talk about herders, routes, and all of that. So that's all part of natural resource governance. So we introduced these dimensions to also help us deepen our understanding of the context of social cohesion.
Right, and you mentioned this previously, but obviously we've got lots of insecurity in Nigeria at present, quite a bit of agitation in several regions. So the pulse that you felt and the results that's emerged shouldn't be a big surprise, should it?
Well, it's not a surprise, because when we
anecdotally,
yes, anecdotally,
you would have known these
anecdotally,
things.
Citizens say, but we know that there's insecurity is rife. We know that poverty is also rife. We know that these are really, really hard times, and it's really tough for people. The economic condition in the lives of citizens is getting tougher and tougher. Standards of living dropping significantly. So anecdotally, we know that. But what this helps to do is to put the hard numbers to the issues and put it in front of policymakers so that they can say, okay, this is a survey. Let's take a look at what it says.
Right. And you mentioned that the policymakers were looking sort of peripherally, if I might put it that way.
At least the Vice President attended our event, the National Social Cohesion Dialogue.
No, you mentioned that, but
yes.
I'm trying to see if there's anything beyond that you can concretely point to.
I think listening closely to the independent speech of the President, I could tell that his mind is...
Yeah, but he talked about social cohesion.
Yes,
he didn't say what they were doing in relation to that social cohesion.
He mentioned quite a number of things. So, for example, he talked about the need to dialogue with any group of people who are willing to dialogue. Right. That's part of cohesion. He also mentioned the expansion of the Empower scheme from 500,000 to about 1 million youths. I mean, of course, we talked about the fact that the youths, many of them are unemployed and they're looking for opportunities. So that's also one of the solutions. But of course, there are more. It talks about the blue water project, which will provide maritime security. I mean, also talked about COVID and all of that. So if you look at them in some ways, you see that they also have, elements of trying to address social cohesion in one way.
Yeah, but I mean, he would have said those things anyway, because there are issues that are problems in Nigeria. So, I mean, I'm trying to see the relationship between that and the survey. But in terms of your methodology,
yes.
Was it the same as before, what you called a random stratified sample interview technique?
Precisely. So that's what gives us the ability to be able to run these trends. It's a random stratified sampling technique that divides the country into strata. We have the states, further divide the states into senatorial districts and further down to local governments. And we use, enumeration area maps to be able to scientifically identify these areas and then go into households and engage at household level to scientifically collect the data. So yes, we practically use the same approach that we used in 2019 to conduct this current survey.
Right. And what are the central differences between the last survey you conducted 2 years ago and the one in 2020?
The indicators. The indicators.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned that
and
expanded.
in the last survey,
right,
we didn't conduct an index, but with the expanded indicators, we're able to now conduct some deep statistical analysis to come up with an index, and that's how we found that.
Okay.
Our current social cohesion index for Nigeria is 44.2%.
Right, okay. And we've got a couple of minutes before we have to go. You and I talked over the phone about the fact that the president mentioned the census, that he's planning to conduct a census in 2022. What are your thoughts about that? Because in the past, there's been a lot of issues around censuses carried out in this country.
Well, I'm really excited. I think I must say kudos to the president for even sort of creating a budget for census. The last census conducted in Nigeria was conducted in 2006. It's a decennial project, which means it should be conducted every 10 years. So we're sort of 15 years behind that census. There are 4 major demographic data collection. There's the census, there's the specialized surveys like the MIX, like the malaria indicator survey. We also have registration systems like NIMC, driver's license, international passport, and we also have administrative records like tax, school enrollment, and all of that. But census is at the bedrock of all major demographic data collection. And the beauty of it is that if we should talk about at least the most important reason for a census, is that it helps to clarify the size, the structure, and the population density of the people. Today, World Bank puts our population at 206.1 million. The CIA fact book puts our population at 219.5 million. So you are not sure which to go for.
Right.
But a census helps to put that in order.
Give it more accurate.
Makes it accurate.
Figures.
Then the structure.
Right.
In terms of that, what's the population of male versus female, children, adults, and all of that.
So it's an important.
And where are they located?
Right.
So where are the people?
Well, I mean, the key thing is what challenges they're going to face to get to all of that. But that's a story for another day. Professor Bell Ihua, who is Executive Director of the Africa Polling Institute, thank you very much indeed. That's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.